everybody, I'm off to a hell of a start. Good morning. I am Tommy, and you are on the lifeboat. At least it's morning in a lot of places. It's officially afternoon here in Salinas, Ecuador. Hello, Ann from Massachusetts. This one is another one of those things that is going to get people hot and bothered on both sides, and this is one of the most fascinating things that has ever happened. Honestly, just purely from a true crime kind of a thing, this is very interesting. Ann from Massachusetts, Renee B., good to see you. Krista Melinda, what's happening? Hello, Johnny Scoville. Joanne Adams, good to see you. This one is a very interesting one, and if we can sort of take politics out, then this is a fascinating case from both sides of the equation. You're going to hear a lot of people screaming about the First Amendment. The First Amendment also promises that you can practice your religion without anyone interrupting it. Carrie Cushman, good to see you. The question becomes, what was going on when Don Lemon went into the church? And it's not just Don Lemon. There have been other arrests made on this as well. Here's my thing on this. I'm not happy that Don Lemon was arrested. Believe it or not, I'm not. Because number one, I don't think that there's a jury in America that's going to convict him of this. So it's kind of a waste of time. But that's a very interesting discussion to have in and of itself. How many laws do we have in the United States that you can arrest somebody for and no one's ever going to get convicted? But this is a slippery slope. It really is. I don't understand why isn't Donald Trump arrested and why isn't those fake ICE officers arrested? They murdered people. Well, we're not here to talk about that. What we're here to talk about is Don Lemon being arrested. And with all due respect, that's ideology. If you hate Donald Trump so much that we can't have a conversation about this, then it's probably not the show for you. But the question becomes this: is it okay to go into somebody's house of worship and protest? And if it is, does that mean that you can go into a synagogue and start to protest what is going on in the Gaza Strip? And on the flip side of that, could you also go into a mosque and start to protest how they treat women? Now, the answer to that question is you can't do that. We have laws in this country that protect people having the ability to exercise their First Amendment right of religious freedom. The ability to get together and have a religious meeting worshiping the God of your choice without people coming in. And who is he, says Carrie Cushman. Don Lemon was he used to be at CNN. He is a very well-known journalist that used to work at CNN. Then he got fired from CNN and went out and started to do independent news. Very much like Megyn Kelly does, where now they continue to do exactly, or whatever that other guy's name is, the fat dude from Fox. What's his name? Tucker Carlson. He's a little beefy. Maybe that was not fair. But Tucker Carlson, where you now go out on your own and you begin to do your own journalism. But he is a journalist, and he is a journalist that absolutely can't stand Donald Trump, and Donald Trump can't stand him. But he went into a church, and his statement, I believe, is that he was following a protest in. But what you're going to find, unfortunately, is that we're going to be seeing, let me see if I can pull this up chair. What we're going to be seeing is a lot of this kind of stuff where this isn't going to necessarily be the issue. Here is the statement from Don Lemon's attorney. It says, Don Lemon was taken into custody by federal agents last night in Los Angeles, where he was covering the Grammy Awards. Don has been a journalist for 30 years, and his constitutionally protected work in Minneapolis was no different than what he has always done. The First Amendment exists to protect journalists whose role it is to shine light on the truth and to hold those in power accountable. There is no more important time for people like Don Lemon to be doing his work. I think that's a great statement. Instead of investigating the federal agents who killed two peaceful Minnesota protesters, the Trump Justice Department is devoting time, attention, and resources to this arrest. And that is the real indictment of wrongdoing in this case. This unprecedented attack on the First Amendment and transparent attempts to distract attention from the many crises facing the administration will not stand, man. Don will fight these charges vigorously in court. And I'm sure that he will, and I'm sure that he should. However, there are laws that stop you from going into churches, right? Because that is the First Amendment, whether or not anyone wants to admit this. And this is why this is a fascinating case. is because was Don Lemon exercising his rights of as a journalist? If you walked in to film a protest that was happening in the church, is that legal? I don't know the answer to that. And I don't know that anyone else does. I don't know that this has ever come up in this exact context. But the First Amendment most assuredly protects you from exactly what Don Lemon did. Now, was he part of a protest or was he filming the protest? Now, I watched all of the footage that I could find, and he most assuredly has got his microphone in people's faces and he's asking them questions. Well, is it okay? And this is legit. I tend to believe that he only reported what was happening, but is it okay to walk in and interview people who are in the process of worshiping? Because by law, it is not. And if he were standing there filming what the other people were doing, chanting and disrupting a religious service, but once you become a part of the protest, then there is a gray area. Once you're in someone's face asking them questions, and the person who runs it says, hey, I don't want you in here. We're here to worship Jesus. This is what we're doing. I don't want you in here. Don Lemon doesn't stop. He continues to, now, here's the question, because this literally is very interesting if you can remove politics, and most can't. But if you can remove politics out of this, then this is a fascinating case, because the U.S. statute that he is going to be arrested on, or he has been arrested on, a grand jury indicted, is that you can't interfere with somebody's First Amendment rights. Irony, right? He is being arrested for not allowing people to worship the way that they see fit. He was never a part of it. You watched it. So he was not interviewing people. NJS 55, he didn't interview people. He didn't walk up to people who were there just to worship and ask them questions, because I saw that. And to me, that is most assuredly asking someone questions while they're supposed to be worshiping is interfering with their ability to worship the way that they want to. The question is going to be, in my opinion, though, is whether or not he coordinated with the people that went to that facility to protest. If he knew that they were going there to go into a church ahead of time, but it's a slippery slope, NJS, and I don't know whether or not you're a believer. But where do we draw the line? So if I say to a journalist tomorrow, I'm going to go to a synagogue on Saturday, and I'm going to go storming into this synagogue, and I'm going to ask them questions. Okay, so asking questions inside the church, you're now becoming a part of this. You're not covering news once you break the law. And I'm sorry, but there is a law that protects exactly this from happening. So if I go into a synagogue and all I want to do is ask questions about what's going on in Gaza, is that protesting? Yes, he probably knew ahead of time. Then this is a breaking of the law. If he knew ahead of time that this is what they were going to do and he participated in it, there is a law for that. And I know that this is going to piss people off. But sadly, the slippery slope becomes, and I appreciate that, NJS. This is the slippery slope on this gets to be scary because there are a lot of people in the United States who hate Muslims, right? This is a reality. There are a lot of people who hate particular religions. Currently, right now, anti-Semitism is on the rise like we've never seen it. So if we allow this to go on, then is it okay for us to go into a synagogue and start to ask them about the Gaza Strip? Because to me, that is protected by the First Amendment. Can you drop that down a degree or two? This is protected by the First Amendment. And it's odd because truthfully and honestly, the First Amendment is supposed to protect Don Lemon doing what Don Lemon did. However, and this is my interpretation, if you just film it, right? But when you start getting in the pastor's face, I think that really starts to be a problem. He shouldn't have gotten in the pastor's face. I'm glad they arrested him. You know why I'm not glad that they arrested him? Because I think he broke the law. Make no mistake. But there are laws in this country that we are just not going to try to convict somebody for. And this is such a politically charged thing that what the administration sadly has done is thrown red meat to people that don't want to talk about issues. They're throwing red meat to people that are just going to run with this. And this is going to be, he's shutting up the people that are, we have a law in place that is the freedom to worship any way you see fit. And it is the backbone. It is number one. So when they say to you, the First Amendment, right? He's an activist, says Pamarosa. Well, And that's a decent argument, isn't it? Because this man has been so outspoken, and when you watch his statements, he says stuff like, let's get one thing straight, right? I'm a journalist, and journalists aren't supposed to blah, 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 but fuck ICE, right? This is his statement. So when you go into that church, and by the way, for those who are following this, the reason that they targeted that church is because they believed that the pastor may have had affiliation with ICE. And that may or may not be the case. Don bores me, says Chrysler George. Here's the thing. I just don't like that this is going to ratchet up, right? The narrative that, and here's the thing. I'm going to piss more people off, but there are people who are going to use this to say, this is Hitler. He's shutting down the people that are against him. The laws matter. By the way, so people have left in the comment section that the gentleman that got shot the other day, that he had not quit his job. I'm not sure whether or not that has been completely debunked. Yes, one way or the other. However, there are definitely bot farms that apparently came out of Vietnam that have been muddying the waters really badly on this. Tell you what, though, if you haven't seen the 13th, the protest from the 13th, where that man kicked the back tail light assembly out of a and then spit at officers and said, arrest me, mother effer, right? Come over here and hit me, mother effer. This is not a peaceful protester. I mean, you can say that he was. This guy acted like a lunatic. And if you haven't seen that clip of film, I mean, again, I'm not happy about any of the shit that's going on. However, I am pretty good, I promise you, at disassociating myself from the politics part of this. I'm not happy about what happened with Don Lemon solely because of the politics part. If Don Lemon had never said anything about the president and the president never said anything about Don Lemon, then this would have been a very simple question of what a lemon of a situation, says Unpredictable Tony. There are a lot of people that believe this. Attacking a church is an act of domestic terrorism. Don Lemon knew exactly what he was doing. No matter your religion, it's wrong, period. Protesting on public property. Now, standing outside of the church, we have what's called the FACE Act, which protects abortion clinics, houses of worship, and things like that. You're still allowed to protest. There are laws that say you absolutely can protest. However, you can't interfere with people going in and out. You can't get in the faces of people and scream at them. Once they cross a certain line, you must leave those people alone. To enter the facility, if somebody goes into an abortion clinic, it's under the same laws. And you're going to hear the people that are ideologically entrenched on this, on both sides of the equation, scream all kinds of rhetoric. There is, depending on which side of this you're on, both sides have an argument. The Don Lemon absolutely has the ability to report on things. That is what the First Amendment allows. However, I've said this a bunch of times. Your free speech stops at my doorstep, right? You can say anything you want. You can say racial slurs. You can use the N-word in public. You can do all of these stupid things. Try that shit in my living room and see what happens to you, right? Your freedom of expression, your freedom of speech, and all of that stop at my front door. You want to come in my house and say, the N-word, I'm punching you in the throat. And you can, I'll deal with the consequences. You can deal with the consequences. You are entitled to free speech. And I am wholeheartedly a firm believer in this. I am exercising free speech for the entire world every day. I give my opinions. I do all of this stuff. Did Don Lemon know about the FACE Act? It would be pretty hard not to understand what that law is. Don Lemon, make no mistake, this guy was an award-winning journalist. You may not like what Don Lemon has done over the course of his career, but in his early days, before there was any kind of political ideology involved in this, before Trump became president, he won awards for some really incredible journalism. I happen to think the guy's got talent. Is he in the Twin Towers? He most assuredly is. Right now, he would be in the Twin Towers, at least until they can get an arraignment. I believe this is going to be a federal offense. This is not going to be a state crime. But as of right now, he should be in the Twin Towers. He was picked up in Los Angeles, and he was picked up almost without incident. Apparently, once they put him in handcuffs, he kind of freaked a little bit. but it wasn't anything that was going to rise to the level of other charges or resisting without violence or anything like that. You don't interrupt a church service unless it's an emergency or an arrest. And here's the thing about this. With the number of churches that have been shot up by people that have gone in hating them, can you imagine the terror of, I go to church every Sunday. I'm a person that worships God in a church. I would be terrified if people came through the front door screaming stuff, right? That would scare the crap out of me. And it would probably scare the crap out of the people at our church who carry guns. And there are people at our church who carry guns. There are people at every church these days who carry guns because there have been so many attacks on houses of worship. This had to be a very frightening thing. They targeted this church because allegedly one of the guys that worked there, maybe even the pastor, had ties to ICE. We have ratcheted up the rhetoric in this country where ICE is synonymous for a lot of people with Satan, and I get it. I get that people are pissed off about this, but it's disturbing the peace to be sure. But more importantly, it's a violation of the First Amendment. You can't do anything. You can't do anything that violates somebody else's First Amendment. So this is why this is a fascinating case, because Don Lemon exercising his First Amendment rights to go in and report on this impinged on the First Amendment rights of the people that were in there worshiping. Which First Amendment rights are going to be stronger? It's like two poker hands that both end with a ace. Which one of these is going to be a higher suit, so to speak? I'm unapologetically Christian. Sorry, raised my kids there. That was terrorism, and they need to see jail time. They'll fine him and create more havoc. Here's the thing. It carries a hell of a lot more than a fine. I don't think anyone will convict him. This is a very difficult environment to find 12 people that could just look at the law. I mean, with all due respect, most people have a very serious ideological bent on this. If you tended to have voted Republican, then there's a good chance that you think that Don Lemon should have been arrested. There are people that voted the other direction, that if Don Lemon had gone in there and thrown shit at the minister, they wouldn't think he needed to be arrested, because the ideology on this, and I'm telling you right now, I'm down the middle in this. I am a guy that thinks if you break the law, you should be arrested. However, this is a fascinating case because Don Lemon has the right to report. They have the right to worship without being interrupted. When those two things hit against each other, what's going to be the bar, right? What is going to be the bar on this? Because it could go in a lot of directions. It really could. And as I was saying to my friend MJS earlier, if they know that if they find out that before he went in there, he knew he was going down to a church, he was going to go inside with all of the people, then he's not reporting. He's a part of it. He's a protester. In my opinion, he was causing disruption. I tend to believe that he did it on purpose. Personally, I support the church. I honestly, I just wish this didn't happen because it isn't going to help anybody. Brenda Lewis, I don't know that I'm that much smarter. I sure as hell read a lot of books, though. And yeah, no, you know what? I shouldn't say that. It made me smarter than when I walked into prison. I'm well read. I don't know if that equates to smart in the traditional sense of the word. But I've read a hell of a lot of books. I had a lot of time on my hands. So I did a lot of reading. But I don't know that I'm definitely smarter than when I walked in. He's no reporter. Well, here's the thing, and this is a problem that we have to deal with in America on both sides of the equation. Make no mistake, on both sides of the equation. We really don't have an independent press anymore. We used to. In fact, they used to train people in press coverage that if people knew what side of the equation you were on, you had already failed. This, however, is, we live in an environment today where the people at Fox tell you how stupid the Democrats are. The people at CNN tell you how stupid the Republicans are. And they're very outspoken about what their particular bent is. And I do believe that makes them less reporter and more commentator, right? I do happen to believe that. He didn't disrupt things. It was already disrupted. Well, again, if all you did was film, I think that's a legitimate argument. But getting into the face of the minister and forcing him to answer questions, especially after he said, I don't want you in here, right? That is, to me, protesting. That, to me, but again, this is a fascinating subject because his First Amendment rights are going right up against all of the parishioners in that church's First Amendment rights. Both of them are protected by the First Amendment, right? So how does this one get worked out? It's really kind of fascinating. I wonder if lemons practice the craft ancient religion of sodomy. Oh, goodness. Sorry, I didn't know where that was going, Peter. Tit for tat BS. Well, it's a very difficult question to answer, honestly. But my fear is that it doesn't matter what side of the equation you're on. Statistically speaking, you're probably going to get 7 people that lean to the right, and you're going to get about 5 people that lean to the left. If depending on what court it ends up in, it could be the other way around. But you're not going to get 12 people that are going to agree on this. You're absolutely, Ashley G. When you put up a question that just says what, I have no idea what you're talking about. You got to give me a little more to go on. I'm not that bright. This is a fascinating question because, once again, your right to religious freedom and the ability to assemble and worship without people messing with you is a First Amendment right in the United States. Don Lemon's ability to report on things is a First Amendment right. The question becomes, is he eligible for bail? Absolutely. He'll be out on bail. No, you absolutely were wrong, Ashley G. I am not even remotely that intelligent. And I know you don't like me anymore. Your comments, I get it. But I don't know what means. You can prohibit freedom of assembly. You can't prohibit freedom of assembly to worship protected. No, you can't. However, you also can't stop people from reporting on things. This is really a fascinating question. It is a fascinating question because you're going to have it is not good. I agree with you on this, right? I agree with you on this. This is not good. No matter how you look at this, the optics suck. It looks like it's the president going after a reporter that hates him. But statistically speaking, 9 out of 10 reporters hate him. So if any reporter does something that isn't from Fox News or Newsmax, or I don't know, there's a third one, I think. What's it called? Mercury or something? But if you're not from one of the 3 right-leaning news agencies, then chances are you hate the president. Chances are you've said some stuff about the president. But there are laws out there, whether or not people agree with them. If the laws suck, rewrite them. But we do protect houses of worship, and we need to, because with the number of people that currently hate the Jews in our country, right? Anti-Semitism is on the rise. If we allow this, does that mean that every single time they meet in synagogue, they can anticipate people going in there and screaming about what is happening in the Gaza Strip? Because that's not a good thing. Do you think this has the potential to go to the Supreme Court? Absolutely, I do. But that would only be if it got that far. And the truth is, it probably will not. Like I said, so to get to the Supreme Court, you're going to have to lose and then appeal and lose and appeal, right? I think that I guess that the prosecution could appeal this and it could eventually end up at the Supreme Court. I don't think any group of people in the United States are going to convict Don Lemon on this. I just don't think that they're going to find 12 people that are that open-minded. We have freedom of speech, religion, etc. If this is where we are, it's way too late for stopping a complete lockdown. Congress still consulted about the Gaza, etc. Well, but you understand my point, right? How about going into mosques and screaming about how those people treat women? How is it that women aren't allowed to drive? Why do they have to wear burqas? Blah, blah, blah. We can't allow people to go into houses of worship and protest. Now, the question is that what he was doing? Or was he going in there to just report on things and he's the fifth estate? And that's really going to be the question. And it's going to be a difficult one to answer. Free speech applies to Don Lemon. It absolutely does, right? But free speech also is the same First Amendment is what protects people in a house of worship from not having people come in and protest. And the question becomes, when he gets up with the microphone and gets in the face of the minister who says, I would like you to leave my house of worship. I'm here to worship Jesus. He doesn't go, okay, I'm terribly sorry. What he said instead was, hey, I'm a Christian. I worship Jesus every day, and then stuck the microphone back in the guy's face. At that point, are you part of the story? Are you making the news or are you reporting the news? Right? That's going to be the question, I think. If, again, it's not going to be the question because this isn't going to ever get that far. But that's what the question would be. But you're not going to find 12 people who could just rule on the law, right? There will be jury nullification on both sides of this one way or the other. You're either going to get a hung jury because there will be some ideologues on both sides of the aisle. But I don't believe you'll find 12 people that will move forward on this. There are Soros-funded protests. Those are paid protests, not organic. Do we all call Soros terrorists? Yeah, they absolutely sometimes conflict. And what happens when they do? Because they currently are conflicting. To be sure they are. But the question is going to be, if, let's say that Don Lemon had nothing to do with the protest. Let's say he just went in and didn't say a damn word. All he did was film. Do you think we would still be here? Because I don't. I really don't. But however, the FACE Act, the FACE law is the one that they use more often than not. You hear about it at places like abortion clinics, but it also translates directly to houses of worship. You can film from outside. Once you enter the building, you are in a shitstorm. Now, and you're going to hear a lot of people on the left whose response to this is just going to be free speech. And they're going to talk about how this is, why don't you go look at the clip of film of him on the 13th, kicking the taillight assembly out of a car and spitting on the officers, yelling, attack me, motherfucker, right? I don't think that man was just peacefully filming, but that's your right, and you can have that opinion. But this is a guy that they have on film, right? Earlier when he got tackled, they didn't arrest him, by the way, but he kicked the back of a federal agent's car enough to break the taillight assembly, which was hanging and swinging on a string. You can go look at that today, which is a felony, right? They didn't arrest him for it, but that's a felony. It's the war of Dons, Donald Trump versus Don Lemon. And in this corner, sadly, that's how this is probably going to play out. It's going to be a lot of people who look at this in those two ways. What this should never be is the war of anybody. This should be, here are the laws. You're arrested for it. If you believe that you've done nothing wrong, you're going to go to court. Your attorney, who you got a really good attorney, is going to argue that you did not break the law. We do have a law that says you can't do anything that impinges on someone else's constitutional rights. So if what you're doing is stopping the right of assembly, then you have impinged on someone else's rules. I mean, someone else's First Amendment rights. The First Amendment protects people in houses of worship from having to deal with exactly what happened. It also gives people like Don Lemon and anybody else that calls themselves a journalist the opportunity to report on things. This is the two of them smacking together. So the question becomes, who's going to be found right and who's going to be found wrong? And this is a very difficult one. It really is. But it is also a wildly slippery slope. If you're allowed to go inside and start asking people questions, if a protest shows up there, how easy will it be for people to go, all right, look, we're going to meet over at the synagogue at 11 o'clock. You guys are going to go in and start to protest. And I'm going to come in with the big ass lights and start asking them why the hell they're allowing this stuff to go on in Gaza. It is a slippery slope. And it's one that for a very long time has never been an issue in our country, right? There haven't been people breaking into churches and doing this stuff, but currently it's happening. They were in there, they were chanting. And again, if you are someone that goes to church, most churches, especially in America, now have people who are carrying weapons. And they're carrying weapons because there have been so many shots fired and people killed. The Dylan Roof episode, that racist piece of shit that went in, sat down, did a Bible study, and then shot a bunch of black people, right? Just a lowlife. He's on death row in the feds. Good afternoon, Louisa. Good to see you. It is a slippery slope. And it is a difficult question to answer. And the problem is going to become, right now we're having a fairly healthy discussion about this, right? People are weighing in on both sides. We don't have a lot of name calling. In the comment section, I will be called a Nazi. I will lose subscribers. And I'm not coming down on either side of this. I truthfully am not. But here's the thing. laws are laws. When you break laws, things happen. The question in this one is not as black and white as it is if you kick the back of a car, are you violating a law, right? That's vandalism. That's pretty cut and dry. This one is going to be a little bit more difficult. Peter Birdsall says, is Zionism and global religion a good thing? And global religion? You know what? Not the issue we're talking about right now, Peter, right? Again, we can deflect and we could talk about gun rights or we could talk about abortion. But the question right now is, did Don Lemon break the law by going into that church and start interviewing people during a protest? And the problem, with all due respect, is that there is so much ideology on both sides of this that the very first comment that came up when I came in here was, Donald Trump ought to be the person arrested for all the stuff that's going on, blah, blah, blah. That's not what I'm talking about. I don't give a shit if Donald Trump is right or wrong. I said that the last time. I'm talking about, and this is a true crime channel, I'm talking about laws that are being violated, right? He will be able to go to court. That's absolutely a fact. If it gets that far, they got a grand jury indictment on this. Do you know why? Because no other place would indict him. Now, people are going to say, well, that's because he didn't do anything wrong. No, it's because we are in such a political ideology right now. What's that old, how does it go? Hide behind the skirts of ordinary Jews. Do me a favor. Somebody get rid of Peter Birdsall. I don't ever want to see him again. Thank you. Hey, you're a lowlife, Peter. You're a lowlife. Yeah, you're a lowlife. It's disgusting. It really is. Here's the problem with our country. Here's the problem with why you have to protect houses of worship. Because assholes like Peter Birdsall will be there protesting and calling people, racial slurs. Because that's the kind of guy we got here. Really a good dude. I bet your mom's proud, Peter. Be gone, says Chrysler George. Thank you. And you know what? I'm sorry if I sound pissed off. But the anti-Semitism, whether you're on that side or you love the Jews, when you start talking about the other side and using slurs, you're a piece of shit. Sorry. It's why we have to have laws to protect houses of worship, because of people like Peter. I don't understand how they didn't stop them more aggressively. It boggles my mind. You are talking about people that believe in turning the other cheek, correct? I mean, in a Christian house of worship, you're probably not going to have people bucking on them, but I'll bet you a couple of them are reaching for pistols, right? That's a scary thing to have people come inside and start screaming in a house of worship, right? This has not traditionally gone well. You need to protect freedom of religion as well as the rest of the freedoms. That's why it was the First Amendment to the Constitution. I agree with you, Ashley G. It's a very difficult question when both of them, which one trumps the other, right? Is the freedom of the press so sacrosanct that you're allowed to go in and disrupt a house of worship? Or is a house of worship so sacrosanct that even the press doesn't have the ability to go in there to cover a story or to create one? And that is another really serious issue in this. Was Don Lemon reporting on a story or was he creating a story? Because once someone in the news becomes part of the story, then that changes the narrative in a pretty big way, in my opinion. But what do I know, right? For real. We've established just a convict. There's always one, said Lynn. I wish that were the case. There's usually more than one, unfortunately, But this is the point I was making. This is why this is a slippery slope. If we allow people to go into houses of worship and start to get into the faces of people, the Peters of the world are going to start going into houses of worship and yelling racial slurs at Jewish people. Even if you are press, a church is still private property. So being media does not give you special legal right to enter or report inside without permission. I think that's an interesting take because, like First Amendment auditors, right? We've all seen these people, protesters that get cameras and put them in people's faces and get right up on them. You don't have a expectancy of privacy when you step outside of the United States. This has been litigated all the way to the Supreme Court. Once you step outside your door, you can expect that people are going to be filming you. That's just the world that we live in. But on private property, once you enter a church, that's a really interesting point, Unpredictable Tony, and it's not one that I had thought of. But it is a very interesting point, and it's one I probably ought to try to chase down. It's Yeah, that's a fascinating angle on this, because those people probably, I mean, they do have a right. The understand precedent cuts both ways. It does. This is why, look, people, every time I cover something like this, I lose subscribers, I lose money, I lose friends, right? But for me, these things are cut and dry. This has to do with the law, right? The law. And today I did something that I never do, right? I spent an hour watching CNN and I spent an hour watching Fox. I was looking at both sides to hear the narrative. And one of the narratives is just so cold-hearted. This is a violation of freedom of speech. We are back in 1939 Germany. I mean, it was unbelievable. The narrative on CNN really just forgot the fact that this has anything to do with the First Amendment rights of the people worshiping. On the other side, they did not give a rat's ass about the fact that the freedom of press is something that we have baked into our Constitution for a reason, right? It was totally against the law, says Lynn. I tend to agree with you, right? But on CNN, right, I heard so many people say this. It's a waste of time to bring this charge against him because there's no way a jury anywhere in America is going to convict. Now, I believe that. So what does that say about our legal system? There are laws out there that you can break and nobody is going to convict you for them. How is it that we have become a country that these laws are okay, these laws are not okay? If they line up with my ideology, I don't care about the law anymore. If it doesn't line up with my ideology, and it's going to be very interesting because there are a lot of people on both sides of the aisle who are very deeply religious. It's going to be interesting to see how the ideologues on both sides fall on this, right? Because this is a very interesting case. It is not a free speech violation because the First Amendment limits the government, not private property owners. Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I don't think that on the Don Lemon side, this is as much of, I don't think they have as solid an argument as does the House of Worship. But I really do think that this is going to be the linchpin on this case in a very big way is going to have to do with whether or not he was aware that a protest was about to happen. Because if so, he's a part of it. He's not reporting on it, right? If you know that they're going to go in there and storm a church and you're just going down there to film it, that it's one thing if something spontaneously happens in front of you. If you organize it, yeah, I don't listen to them, Lynn. I'm just fascinated to see how both sides paint it. I don't listen to the other side either. I really don't. What I like to do is there are certain, Straight Arrow is a great news service. There are some out there that you're just reading the feeds. There's nobody telling me what to think. They're just telling me what the laws are. So you know if you're someone that wants to do a little deep thinking, you can just sort of look up the statute on this, and you're looking at 18 USC 241, conspiracy against rights. If two or more persons conspire to injure, oppress, threaten, or intimidate any person in any state, territory, commonwealth, possession, or district in the free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege secured to him by the Constitution or laws of the United States, or because of having so exercised the same, or if two or more persons go in disguise on the highway or on the premises of another with intent to prevent or hinder his free exercise or enjoyment of any of the rights or privileges so secured. They shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years or both, if death results from the acts committed to the violation of the section, or if such acts include kidnapping or attempt to kidnap, aggravated sexual abuse, or an attempt to commit aggravated sexual abuse, or an attempt to kill, they shall be fined under this title or imprisoned for a term of up to life. But this does carry 10 years, right? Up to 10 years, because we have written a law about this. If we don't think this is a law that ought to be followed, then let's get rid of the law. Kind of like coming across the border. If you don't think it should be 5 years to come across the border illegally, then you need to take it up and have that changed. But right now it's a law. You break the law, you shouldn't get a pass because the ideology that you believe in means that we shouldn't obey that law, right? That law doesn't matter. You steal something, you ought to go to prison, right? You steal something, you should go to prison. But if you do any of these other things, I'm okay with that. He thanked the ringleader for allowing him to participate in their meeting hours before they stormed the church. Really? See, that is going to be interesting.
Who said that? I can't see the comment.
You see it now?
No.
Well, how about that? I just posted it.
Oh, no.
There you go. If there are no other names other than Epstein in the Jeffrey Epstein files, why so many redactions? Well, what they would tell you is that they redact this very often for people that they can't prove. Like, let's say that somebody puts your name in this, but there's no proof whatsoever that you actually did anything. They could destroy your entire life by having your name in there. By the way, I'm just telling you the narrative, not that I believe in it. The other is that they're going to say a lot of those names that are redacted are the victims, and they're going to redact every one of the victims' names. However, I will be doing an Epstein story later today because there's some wild shit going on in the Epstein case. Yes, his post-storm interview with the leader. Interesting. It's mob rule, a slippery slope. Lynn says, I bet he'll do 3. Any takers? I would probably take that because, again, you're going to have to get 12 Americans to sit on a jury who will literally say, I'm not going to give a shit if this is Donald Trump. And I'm not going to give a shit if this is Don Lemon. I am just going to look at the law, and I'm going to apply the law to exactly what happened that day. I don't think that America is that country anymore. I'm sorry, I don't. I don't think you could get 12 independent people. If politics have anything to do with what's going on, you're never going to find 12 people that can set their politics aside. For real. Now, don't get me wrong. JNS, right? Our friend here. I would love to see that individual on a jury because they have an opinion, but they're listening to both sides of the argument. They're saying, good point. Hadn't thought about that. Those people exist. But to find 12 of them, there are so many people that are going to just say, I don't care. Carrie Cushman says, I'm over it. And you know something? I kind of get it, right? But I think that it's a bit frightening. And I know I'm not picking on you, but I think it's a bit frightening that we are getting into the area where most Americans are going, I'm over it, right? I think that this is almost a prevailing attitude these days. And that's a problem. Don interviewed both sides, though. I understand. And I do agree with you that he was willing to talk to anybody. The question becomes, NJS, is it okay to go in and interview both sides? Once again, let's apply this to a synagogue this Saturday. Can I go in and say, do you think that what's going on in the Gaza Strip is right? How about you, right? I could be finding both sides, but we're still interrupting a house of worship. Heather, good to see you.
2026, you walk into a church screaming, you're lucky you don't get shot and killed.
The real question is, what are they doing while they're distracting us with Don Lemon? Well, you know what? And I understand this. There's a lot of people that say the same thing. But if Don Lemon broke the law and you're arresting him because of that, then everyone is going to go, well, this is a distraction from something else. If we don't arrest Don Lemon, and this is the argument of one side, don't shoot the messenger. But there are people out there that would say, if we don't arrest him, then this weekend, every house of worship in America is in deep shit. Right? They can start going to any house of worship, whether you're a Muslim, whether you're Hindu, whatever you are, your house of worship this weekend is going to get scary. And here's the other thing. Like, Johnny Scoville was saying this a second ago. It's amazing that he didn't get shot or somebody didn't, because most churches these days have armed people inside because houses of worship have become targets. And why are they targets? Because people think they're soft targets. Right? You can go in there and shoot because they're going to turn the other cheek. Now that they've got people packing heat, they'll go back to doing movie theaters and places that are gun-free zones, schools. And I'm not trying to get into the politics of that, but look where those shootings happen. They happen in gun-free zones. Flock cameras. I don't know what flock cameras are. Julie says the issue is most churches. Honestly, I love you. I don't understand how that is the issue, though. At all, right? I really don't. Whether they're tax exempt or tax free, the right to worship in that place is sacrosanct. It's written into the First Amendment. right? Long before we were doing 501Cs or anything else. I think the issue, and we can feel free to disagree, but I think the issue has an awful lot to do with whether or not you're allowed to go into a house of worship and feel like you can worship the God of your choice without anybody interfering with you because they don't agree with your particular belief. That's what I think the issue is. The fact that they're tax exempt, I mean, I don't know how that would, and I don't think any church ought to be tax exempt. I've said that a million times. I don't think any church ought to be tax exempt, including mine. I think that every church should pay taxes. But nevertheless, I don't know how that relates to Don Lemon going in there and whether or not that will have anything to do with this case. He can interview anybody, but he pre-planned with the leader to storm the church and thanked her afterwards for letting him go in with her. If that is the case, then he is going to be deemed a protester and not someone that is. They get tax exemption, so they can't get political. I see what you're saying. And you're right. They could get political if they weren't getting tax exemptions. I see what you're saying. That actually makes more sense. The issue, in my opinion, is whether person A's rights are more legal than person B's. And that's kind of it in a nutshell, isn't it? Whose First Amendment right trumps the other in this? But, like our friend just said, if by some chance they're going to be able to document the fact that he knew that he was going in there ahead of time and then thanked the person afterwards for bringing him down there to the protest, that's going to be an issue, in my opinion. Churches are safe spaces, works both ways. I do believe that they should be safe spaces. I don't think that they should. And I would prefer if my church was not tax exempt, right? Because there are issues I would like to hear the church take up. I would like to hear the church talk about particular political issues because I think that they are very relevant to the church, but they will not because they're afraid of losing that tax exempt status. I think the issue is that Lemon is an ass, Lynn says. I know that there are about half of the country that believe in that. We the people's rights come first, period. And that's kind of an interesting take, isn't it? Because people could say we the people are either side of that equation. However, when you have an entire group of people that have assembled to exercise their First Amendment right of assembly to worship, and then you have a smaller group of people that come in to disrupt that, I do happen to believe that we the people, like the people in that church, I do believe that if this were put to a non-biased group of people, that they would have to agree that that needs to be protected, that above all needs to be protected. However, I don't believe that they're ever going to get there. I don't think that we're going to find those 12 people. But this is going to be an interesting thing. Separation of church and state. Well, I mean, the church and the state are absolutely separate, right? This was not a government sanctioned house of worship. The government is not saying the reason that we're going after Don Lemon is because the house of worship he went into was a Christian house of worship. It would have been the same theoretically if he had gone into a synagogue, if he had gone into a Christian church or a Baptist church or a satanic church, right? The First Amendment protects anybody getting together and worshiping the God of their choice without being interrupted. If he joined protesters, blocked services, refused to leave, could be criminal trespass or interference. That is what the courts are sorting out, in my opinion. Well, and it is going to most assuredly, because that's the whole criminal trespass and all of that. But 18 USC 241, and then the other one is the FACE Act, the one that they put in place to protect abortion clinics and things like that. But there are federal statutes, right? Like the one that I just quoted, 18 USC 241 and 242, I believe, are the big ones. Yeah, 18 USC 241. This says these people are exercising their rights, and you're going in with one or more people to say, I'm going to stop you from exercising your rights. I think that's going to trump the him acting as the press. The press, again, and I've said this a million times, but your freedoms stop at my doorstep. And whether that doorstep is my house or my house of worship. However, this sucks any way around. I mean, there are people that I'm going to catch mad shit for this show, but I don't like the fact that this guy got arrested. It would have been a lot better all the way around if it didn't happen, because it's just food for both sides, right? All of the people that hate each other. There are going to be people unfriending each other today on Facebook because some people believe that a house of worship shouldn't be messed with, and some people believe that Don Lemon walks on water and pisses ice cubes, right? Eats bullets. There's going to be both sides that are going to get pissed off about this, and that to me is the biggest problem. What is a government-sanctioned house of worship? There's no such thing. You don't want to go to church and hear politics. Well, that is your absolute opinion. I'll give you an example, though. There are people who believe in their religion that there are things the government does that are a problem, right? There are people that believe that abortion is an issue. If they are tax exempt, they can't ever discuss that from the front of the room. As an election comes up, they surely can't say, from a Muslim point of view, this candidate is no good. From a Christian point of view, this candidate is no good. From a Hindu point of view, this is not the candidate we want. That's the only point I was getting at. There are satanic churches, Gary Cushman. There are satanic churches. Wasn't there anyone in his team to deter him into not going into that church? I think he very badly wanted to go into that church. But then again, Don says he's a journalist, so I guess he has the laws of the country. Yeah. Look, this is a great story for him, right? And I promise you people, he knew that this was going to be a shitstorm. If this is your line of work, shitstorms help, right? Big time. The more controversy, the more controversy that you can get involved in, the bigger your numbers go. This is a payday. It's a distraction again, one after the other. I agree with you, but how can we? The point is we can't make laws based on anything but current laws. If they violate those, look out. Well, and I do believe, right, that if you go in and stop people who are in the process of worshiping, you broke a law, right? That is a U.S. law, 18 U.S.C. My pastor would never say who to vote for. He would simply tell us what politicians stood for and against. I think that even that, you're trotting on that 501c. They're not supposed to do anything like that. I just go to talk to God. I understand. I really do. Pastor Rob McKay preaches politics from the pulpit. Really? How about that? I am a native Atlantan. So is Don. I have been watching him since he started in journalism. This has nothing to do with the price of tea in China, but I know that Don Lemon doesn't like white people. I have not followed him closely enough to agree or disagree with you on that. But there are a lot of people there's a lot that has been said. I've been up for a long time working on this and reading both sides of it. But there are a lot of people that seem to think that there's an awful lot of hate in him. Absolutely, he will get more subs and members. He will. Make no mistake, he will. And unfortunately, there's also going to be a lot of people that are really going to be pissed off. And a lot of us are going to lose friends. I'm going to lose subscribers. I'm going to lose money because even discussing this. AVAC, good to see you. Glad that you're here. He hates speeches as news. He does. Paid agitators to disrupt a peaceful assembly. Well, it kind of looked that way, didn't it? It really did kind of look that way. Now, they could say it's spontaneous, right? But we happen to know that there are people that pay for these spontaneous protests. I'm not saying anything that people don't know, right? You can look up and find ads of people trying to pay. Lemon is going to laugh all the way to the bank. I hate that. Yeah, here's the thing, though. If by some chance they were to get a jury that is unbiased, he could actually be in trouble for this. This does carry serious penalties, and for a good reason. Again, it's a slippery slope. I know if you're an ideologue and you hate Trump enough, then you don't care what he just did. But going into a church, right, and stopping stopping the free assembly of people that want to worship God is an issue. What about the redacted Epstein files again and the 700 election ballot boxes taken from Atlanta? Lots of stuff going on all at once, like always. To be sure, Stick around. I'm going to be doing an Epstein show this afternoon, and I'll give you a little teaser on it. Ghislaine Maxwell has just recently filed papers. Keep in mind, one of the things that Ghislaine Maxwell has been talking about from Jump Street is she had a protection deal. Epstein signed the deal saying that he would not be prosecuted. This was that Florida deal. Not only would he not be prosecuted, but neither would any of his co-conspirators. She is saying 28 people got deals from the government to not be prosecuted. We'll be talking about that later today. That is what she says, 28 of them. Who are those 28 people? And why did they get that deal? I'd like to know who they are. Setting a dangerous precedent if there isn't any consequences. I agree with you. Locked on up, says for Jesus end time prophecies. And all the girlies say he's pretty fly for a white guy. Nothing wrong with that reference. His lawyer is amazing. Absolutely. His lawyer is amazing. And this is going to be very, very interesting because of that. I'm a white straight girl. Well, that's the spirit. Fond of all of those things. We are called a Christian nation. It doesn't mean we should replace English common law. No, I agree with you. But this is the law. Whether we're Christian, Muslim, whatever. Again, if Don Lemon did this in a house of worship that was worshiping anything, it doesn't matter, right? If it was a church of Satan, you have the ability in this country to get together and exercise your religion without having to worry about people coming in and messing with you, right? That is part of our protected First Amendment rights. You follow? So it doesn't much matter. It really doesn't. And sadly, a lot of this is going to get lost in the exchange. A lot of it's going to get lost in the shuffle. They're already running with a narrative that this is just about shutting up Don Lemon. And look, if that's your take, I get it. But there are laws involved, and that's what courts are for. Let's litigate the laws, right? We're never going to see Epstein files in its entirety. Too many super rich involved. And I think too many countries involved. But again, I'll be doing this afternoon. At some point, I'm going to be talking about Epstein because it's a fairly fascinating development that's happening, especially if it's true. There are 28 people, right, that obviously you don't get a deal around Epstein unless you were molesting little girls. And if 28 people got not prosecution deals from that, they all need to be locked up, and there really needs to be a problem. Shut him up today and you tomorrow. So, Leslie, you think that it had nothing to do with him going into a church. He's being shut up just because he disagrees with the president. Is that correct? So here becomes the question. If you disagree with the president and you do anything that's illegal, they're shutting you up because you disagree with the president. What if he had shot somebody? And I know you're going to go, oh, well, that's way different. I don't know that it is. Now, I mean, obviously it's way different. But the point is, laws get broken, then you get people prosecuted. But for us to say as a country, can't prosecute him because the president hates him. Okay, so you can break any law you want? Because this is a First Amendment law. Everyone who's yelling about Don Lemon's First Amendment rights, what about all those parishioners? That First Amendment protects them as much as it does Don Lemon. If they shut him up today, they can come and try to shut me up tomorrow. I can say anything I want. I'm not going into a house of friggin' worship to do it. Right? If I come into your house and I go, Trump sucks, you can have me arrested. I can stand on the corner and yell, Trump sucks until the moon comes up. No one's going to arrest me for that. In fact, I can do it through a bullhorn. You can protest. But if I go and start kicking cop cars, then I'm breaking the law. No, I mean, if we disagree with speech today, they use as precedent to shut people up and define hate speech. Yeah, here's the thing. Hate speech is the only speech that needs to be protected, right? Lynn says, I'm kind of over Epstein files, rich old perverts. I know, but if we get over them, right, and we let it go, then those people don't pay. You know, and that's with all these stories, it's so easy for us to just go, oh, God, more of this. But if we all go, screw it, I don't want to hear about this anymore, then the people that molested 2,000 young girls are going to walk. And we just can't let that happen for real. I mean, maybe we're too far gone as a country, but those girls deserve better than that. That's my humble opinion. I am going to be back today. This is not the only show I'll be doing. Hell, I'll be doing a lot of them. Do me a favor. Make sure you hit the bell for notification. Do hit subscribe. And that way you won't miss. Hey, see you. Good to see you. What's happening? I'm glad that you are here. All right, people. I'm Tommy. Make sure you hit that bell for notification on the way out. Hit subscribe if you have not, because I'm going to lose a bunch of subscribers just for not coming out and calling Trump a scumbag. So I'm going to need all the help I can get. Make sure you hit that like button. It does help, especially when you're talking about not popular stuff. Don Lemon had the right not to do it. Yes, he did. All right, people, I will see you on the next one. Fissile. Have a great day. God bless.